You know, as I sit here today, this year will mark 36 years since the broken angel was taken from us. It is actually raining outside, just as it was the day that this child took the ride to hell. The day before her lifeless body would be discovered in her own crib, in her own bedroom. That rain is a grim reminder, but it also, in a way, sets the mood for this horrific story. Greetings. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division, retired. Listener discretion is advised due to the graphic nature of the content. This case would make grown men cry and drop them to their knees. The following episode recounts the details of a real homicide investigation. All information presented is taken from public court records, law enforcement files, and direct investigative experience. The names of the victims and individuals involved are used in some instances and changed in others to protect the innocent. All individuals involved, names and identifications are used with the utmost respect. No part of this story is intended to exploit or sensationalize their suffering. As a retired homicide investigator, I believe these stories matter to honor the victims, to understand the truth, and to bring closure to the families left behind. Some content may be disturbing to listeners. Discretion is strongly advised. This case evolved in late October, early November of 1989. This particular homicide will always have special meaning to me. Not only was it my very first homicide as lead detective, representing and being responsible to the Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division, it was a homicide of a 2-year-old baby. That sounds like an oxymoron, does it not? Let me say it again. Homicide of a 2-year-old child. Let that sink in for a moment. But it didn't stop there. What the autopsy revealed would dictate the magnification of the intensity in which we would pursue the wicked who were responsible for this horrific crime. The harsh reality for homicide detectives when they think of a child death, they often think of the child being accidentally killed, or a shaken baby syndrome by a family member of the child. A SIDS, or crib death, if you will. That's SIDS. It stands for Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. What you do not think about is what happened to this child. I call this case the broken angel. Her name was Tammy Polk. She lived with her mother, Tammy Polk, and her mother's boyfriend, Malik Abdul. We didn't know his name originally in the beginning of this investigation because he was a very elusive individual that stayed in the shadows and made himself scarce. He was avoiding any type of police attention. Because of his drug addiction, he often had outstanding warrants for his arrest. And if he were ever confronted by the police and they did a background check or a records check, they would find that he might be wanted by the police, and off to jail he would be carted. The home where they lived was fairly decent in general. The house was in the 900 block of 36th on River Road. It was on the east side. On Thursday morning, November the 2nd, 1989, a girlfriend of Tamara paid a visit to the residence to check on baby Tammy, as she knew that the child had suffered a scolding incident earlier, sometime around September the 29th, same year. She was scolded in a hot bathtub. She suspected that Tamara's boyfriend, Malik Abdul, had done that to the child. Miss Tammy Polk had taken the child to Cooper Hospital emergency room, where she explained to them that she accidentally placed the baby in a hot tub while she was distracted by a phone call. It was no secret to this girlfriend and visitor. Her name was Miss Lockstep. She knew, as well as other neighbors in the area, that Miss Polkins was deathly afraid of her boyfriend, Malik Abdul. When we first had contact with him, he presented himself as John Doe. We had to take police methods and efforts to take his fingerprints and get him properly identified. Once we did that, he had been revealed to be a one Malik Abdul. When Miss Lockstep inquired as to where baby Tammy was when she got to the residence, as the baby would usually be downstairs by now, either just having her breakfast or watching cartoons or whatever the case might be. But on this morning, Tammy was missing. Miss Lockstep inquired, "Where's the baby?" Miss Polkins told her, "Oh, she's asleep. She's upstairs in her crib. Don't go bother her. She wasn't feeling too good, so we're letting her sleep in this morning." Miss Lockstep did not like or trust Malik Abdul at all. She had warned Tamara several times about allowing him to be at the house with her and allowing him to watch over the baby. And she also told Miss Tamara that, hey, if you ever get caught with him here, the state would take Tammy away from you. But it all fell on deaf ears. Tamara was hopelessly under his control. He was the person responsible for getting her addicted to crack cocaine as well. And Tamara feared him. Well, on this day, Miss Lockstep was determined to check in on the baby. When she wasn't downstairs as usual, and she was given the excuses about the baby being asleep, etc., Miss Lockstep immediately rushed up the stairs, threw open the bedroom door where baby Tammy was in fact in her crib. As she got closer to the crib, she saw that the baby's eyes were not closed. She didn't appear as if she was sleeping. Her eyes were open and fixed. Miss Lockstep immediately grabbed the baby's arm and felt that she was cold as ice. She immediately panicked, in horror, rushed out of the house without saying a word, went to the nearest telephone that she could get her hands on, and called the Camden City Police and told them that there was a dead baby at the house. Camden City Police arrived. Much to their horror and chagrin, the information that came in was in fact confirmed. They had a 2-year-old dead baby girl on the second floor, lying cold and stiff in her crib. The child was a sight. She was in a body cast. She appeared to be dirty and soiled, clad in her little yellow jumper. An angel who had fallen and was completely broken. There was no mistaking that she was dead. The city police put out a call to the prosecutor's office. I responded from the homicide unit, and Detective Bill Olson responded to represent the Camden City Police Department. Together, we were assigned to this 2-year-old child's death investigation. At this point, we didn't know what to think. The Camden City uniformed first officer on the scene taped off the front of the residence and the rear of the residence, and it was now designated a crime scene. Upon our first observing the deceased 2-year-old child lying dead in her crib, without any knowledge of the cause or manner of death, we wondered what this could be. Could this be a SIDS death? Could this have been some type of accident where she died as a result of hurting herself since she was wearing a full body cast? Well, trust me, we were very quickly becoming suspicious of the death that we had before us. As we looked closer, we could see that there was obvious bruising visible on her face and her body. The fact that the child was in a full body cast certainly indicated that the child had some type of severe injury prior to her death. The questions in our minds were mounting rapidly. We posted a uniformed Camden police officer at the door. Camden County Prosecutor's Office Crime Lab Unit responded, where they began their tedious investigative steps of photographing the child in her current condition and taking measurements of the crime scene. When their work was complete and we were finished getting our preliminary information, the child was removed to the Camden County Medical Examiner's office, also known as the morgue. Since this child was discovered in the early morning hours, the autopsy was scheduled for this day. Both Detective Olson and myself attended. Now, I had already had 17 years of police experience under my belt by the time this homicide occurred. I had already witnessed several autopsies, starting while I was attending the police academy in the early 1970s. During my training in the homicide division, I would also attend autopsies of other detective cases as I was shadowing them, learning the business of being a homicide detective. This autopsy was tough to watch. And I mean tough. Here we had a child, a 2-year-old, my first case. First, they had to cut the body cast from her tiny body. Once the body cast was removed and her clothing was removed, we could see clearly that she had old scars and scarring tissue from a previous scolding that we had no information about at this time. This was still the morning of the discovery of this tiny angel. We also observed what we thought to be a fresh burning of scolding. It was measured to be over 30% of this child's body. We were now glued to this autopsy, jotting down notes, taking information from the medical examiner with our ears and eyes wide open. More was yet to come, much more. The child was eventually placed in an x-ray at the Camden County morgue. There, Dr. Siegel discovered that this child recently suffered a fractured skull and a broken leg, in addition to neck and back injuries, which explained her body cast, and bruises all over her body, her face, her arms, her legs. Like I said, this was tough to watch. When the doctor made his usual Y incision on this child, we can only imagine the torture and suffering and pain that she had already been through at just 2 years old. As in every autopsy, after the complete physical observation and notes recorded concerning what was being observed by the medical examiner, blood, bile, and urine samples were taken and sent off to the New Jersey State Laboratory for further analysis. We didn't give that process a second thought at the time. I mean, after all, she was a 2-year-old child. All we were basically interested in from that was what was found in her bowel, what was her last meal. That information could help us with our investigation as we proceeded and delved deeper into the case. Now, I can tell you from experience as a seasoned homicide detective, there is basically no such thing as a precise time of death on a deceased person. You could get shot in the watch, and that still is not an exact science. Many, many factors have to do with time of death. We always endeavor to pinpoint the time of death as closely as possible. As you can imagine, that's a very important factor in any homicide. A lot of the conditions have to do with the weather, the temperature of the outside of the premises where the body was found, the body temperature of the victim, many factors. Did you know that rigor mortis enters the body and exits the body during a certain time frame? But even that has to do with the condition of the person while they were alive, the condition of the person being deceased, and temperature. Various factors can affect the time frame in which rigor mortis takes place. This information is all very important because when and if this case goes to a trial and you're there in front of a jury and you have defense attorneys that are sharp as sharp can get, and they're there to do one thing: find out what you missed and get a not guilty in the case. That's why you endeavor to do everything that you can, according to the book, to document this homicide. And this one being my first, I was being super careful and super dedicated to get a positive conclusion of the facts of this case. So after the autopsy, our search for information began. We knew very little about the details surrounding the death of the child. We knew we had some injuries that this child had sustained that were on our minds and were serious questions that needed answers. We began by interviewing Miss Lockstep, the person who found the child. Her basic statement was that Tammy Polk was deathly afraid of her boyfriend. She didn't really know his correct name. As I said earlier, he avoided revealing himself to anyone. But she did know that he was not permitted to be living with Tamara at the residence because DYFS, the Division of Youth and Family Services, had concerns about the child's injuries, and she stated that she was very concerned about the fact that on occasion Tamara would leave the child alone with Malik in the house to watch over her. And it seemed like every time he watched her, she would hear about some sort of injury that the child sustained, which raised her concerns about Tamara always taking the blame. She felt strongly that she was covering up for her boyfriend. She explained that she would go to the house on frequent occasions after October the 29th, when she first learned that the baby, Tammy, had suffered a scalding injury in a hot bathtub. She said that from her understanding, Tamara took the blame, but she just didn't believe it. She also said on different occasions when she would stop over the house to visit with Tamara, her boyfriend would be in there smoking crack. And she observed his attitude toward Tamara, and she realized that Tamara was not only deathly afraid of her boyfriend, but he was, in fact, in control of her. And Miss Lockstep knew it. Next, we picked up Miss Tammy Polk, the mother of the child. We were now focused on finding out from her every detail we could about her boyfriend and any and all information that she had pertaining to the death of her 2-year-old baby girl. When we first got her in the room, we didn't advise her of her rights. She was free to go. We had nothing to suspect that she was involved in this horrific death. But if there came a time that we did have suspicions of her, we would certainly advise her of her Miranda warnings. But at this time, we needed to respect the fact that she had just lost her daughter and that she was a grieving mother. Now, I'll tell you from an investigative standpoint, sometimes, and more often than you think, homicide detectives will take the lies. We'll listen to the lies. And we won't confront the lies immediately until after we have an opportunity to check them out. If we confirm that it's a lie and we re-interview that witness or individual and we confront them with the fact that they lied and we know they lied, it has a strong bearing on the interview in getting correct information from a particular individual. So now we allowed her to tell us her story. We asked her to start from a week ago. Tell us about everything she did from the time she got up in the morning until the time she went to bed each night. We call this the first phase of an interview. Sometimes you have to break right into an interrogation based on the information that you know and the new information that you're receiving. But in this case, we were keeping it light. We wanted to find out as much as we could voluntarily from her, and we were laser focused on finding out more details about her mysterious boyfriend. She did tell us his correct name as far as she knew it. She did tell us in her interview that he was in fact a crackhead. She did tell us that she was also addicted to crack cocaine, but not as badly as he was, and the fact that he was the one that introduced her to it and got her addicted. She also asked us, basically begged us, that if she told us this information about him, would we not tell him that she told us this information? Well, right then and there we knew that she had an innate fear of him. We asked her if she ever left her child alone with her boyfriend to watch over her. She said that she did on a couple of occasions, but she wouldn't say that he did any harm to her child. As respect to the scolding incident on October the 29th, she repeated the same story that she told the hospital at Cooper, that she had inadvertently placed the child into a hot scalding tub of water because she was distracted on a telephone call. When we asked her why her child was in a body cast, she explained in the recent past she had went to do an errand and left the child home with Malik. When pressed, she said that he'd never told her that the baby was injured when she came home. She found that out during her first attendance to the child once she did get home. She noticed that the child was hurting and appeared to be injured. She said that her boyfriend explained that the baby was upstairs in the hallway near the top of the steps. And as he was telling her to watch out, be careful, even though she really didn't communicate very well at age 2, before he can get to her aid, she tumbled down the staircase and injured herself. Of course, Tamara called for an ambulance. The child was treated and casted, as she reported that it was an accidental fall in her home while she was out and her boyfriend was home attending and didn't know what to do. She said that she came home as soon as it happened, and that's why the ambulance was just being notified. That part of the story was not true. The baby was injured and not receiving any kind of medical attention until she arrived home. That in itself is a tragedy. Now, during this interview of Tamara, we were getting information from her, which was good. It was an indication that she was trying to tell us the truth. The problem with the interview was the explanations and answers to some of the questions were contrary to what our beliefs were. We had a strong feeling that there was much more to be told. There was much more that happened that she was covering up. We wasn't sure that she knew it or not. We wasn't sure if she believed him when he told her about the accidental fall down the steps. We asked her, did she believe him? And she said that she did. But in the way she said it, as detectives, we were doubtful. We completed our interview with Miss Tamara and released her, arranged for a ride for her back home. And now the search was on for her boyfriend. It took us a couple of days to round him up. When we eventually did, by our asking around the neighborhood and the information that we gleaned from the canvas of the neighborhood when the body was first found, the neighbors said that they always seen him around the house. They always knew that he was in there. They always suspect him of being a crack cocaine addict. But in the last couple days, the information that we were getting was that he could not be found. It was like the man disappeared into thin air, like a fart in the wind. A quote from Shawshank Redemption, when the warden found that Dupree was missing from his cell. Good movie, by the way. Now, since we had what we believed a good name for Tamara's boyfriend, We ran him through our systems. We came up with the date of birth, his social security number, and we found that he had a quite lengthy rap sheet. Various types of crimes. Robberies, drug offenses, resisting and assaults on police. You know, the run-of-the-mill stuff that you find in any inner city. So the hunt was on for one Malik Abdul. Cutting right to the chase, we eventually picked him up after a few days, brought him into the detective bureau, began our interview of him. He agreed to come with us voluntarily. We were hoping that there was an active warrant out so that we could snatch him up, because we felt initially that he would refuse to speak to us. We were a little surprised that he agreed to speak with us, with him being a street-wise, jail-wise criminal. We brought him to the Camden City Detective Bureau and had him sit in an interview room. Part of our strategy was to make him wait there for a few minutes until we walked into the room to begin our interview. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a real police interview and interrogation, but everything matters when you're about to talk to a criminal suspect who you suspect might be involved in wrongdoing. Now, you have to be careful with Miranda. If the person is not free to leave, and you don't make it clear to him that he's free to leave, if he feels like he's in custody, and you do not advise him of his Miranda rights, it can be determined in a court of law that you violated his constitutional rights under the Miranda decision. Now, once you feel that your interview is going to turn into an interrogation because you have suspicions that he may have committed a crime, he or she, then the law dictates that you must advise them of their constitutional rights under the Miranda decision. If they are in custody and you intend to question them about a crime, Miranda is given. Now, they can either agree to speak to you without the presence of an attorney, or they could refuse to speak to you and the interview is over. In this case, the subject agreed to speak to us, and as long as his mouth was moving, he was lying. Now, we knew we had something in the lies that we could investigate and run down and prove to be false, but we also knew that we were dealing with a slippery criminal who could very easily disappear once we let him go. So during the interview, he was told that he was not under arrest and that we wanted to speak to him concerning the death of the 2-year-old child, Tammy Polk, and we knew that he was the boyfriend of Tammy Polk, and we felt that he might be able to shed some light on the circumstances surrounding the death of the 2-year-old baby, Tammy Polk. So during the interview, we provided him with some injury information. We asked him if he knew of any circumstances where the child might have been injured while he was caring for her as her babysitter. We hit him cold with the fact that we knew he babysitted the child from time to time. I think that surprised him a little bit because I think in his mind he believed that Tamara would not have told the police that. When we pressed him, he repeated the story about the baby falling down the staircase while he was watching her on one occasion. And he knew about the incident on October the 29th where the child was accidentally scalded in the bathtub by Tamara. So after both of our police notebooks were loaded with bullshit answers and excuses, we released him and decided to bring Tamara back in for a second interview. This time, we would put her under the detective spotlight, so to speak, and pry more deeply, much more deeply, into her relationship with Malik Abdul and her knowledge of the injuries sustained by her baby child. It was going to get interesting. Our strategy was to set up an atmosphere with intensity, to let her know that this investigation has now heated up into a full-blown homicide investigation. We let her know that there was no accident about the death of her child. We advised her that she was at risk of being evicted and also possibly facing criminal charges for negligence. We pressed upon her the fact that her child was dead, her child was never coming home again, and not to protect anyone, that this was a serious homicide investigation of a 2-year-old child. We finally had her in a position where she cracked and began to cry. She became sick and irritated. She appeared as if she wanted to vomit on a few occasions. We finally convinced her that the truth was what she had to talk about for her daughter's sake and for the sake of her own well-being. She eventually did that. She told us that she had covered up for her boyfriend on the October 29th scolding incident. She told us that before that, when the baby had taken a fall supposedly down the staircase, that she questioned Malik on that. He was high when she was talking to him at the time, but at that time, he told her that the baby had got on his nerves and she got hurt because he was shaking her upstairs and he lost his grip and she went tumbling down the staircase, receiving her neck and back injuries. It was that incident that caused the child to be placed in a full body cast. This next piece of information was extracted from Miss Polk due to good, solid detective work. We listened to the information that we had, and we tried to cover every aspect and every question that we had, and this one was burning in our minds. We asked her about why, the day before the body was found, that she was not home. We told her that we already knew the answer, and we wanted her to be careful in how she responded to us. We learned that from Miss Lockstep, who had visited the house, and she herself was very interested and concerned as to why there was no answer at the door. They didn't have a car, and she couldn't understand why no one was home. She even went back to the house a couple of more times on that night before and could not get a response. And it was getting late. Miss Lockstep had her own questions about that. When we asked her, it seems like she just fell apart right into our lap. She related a story to us that we had to get on top of immediately. She said that she had again left the child home with her boyfriend, but this time when she came home, her child was dead. As to her knowledge, she states that when she confronted Malik about her child now being dead, one of the first things he did was told her that he didn't do nothing. Of course, she didn't believe him. That wasn't an answer in her mind. He finally told her that the baby was crying and crying and crying, and getting on his nerves, and he had accidentally pushed her down the stairs again. How do you accidentally push a 2-year-old baby down the stairs who's already in a body cast? That troubled us. At any rate, she comes home, she finds the baby dead. Now Malik is panicking. He tells her, listen, you can't tell the police about this because I ain't supposed to be here. You know I got a police record, and they ain't going to believe you. You're not supposed to not only have me here, you left me with the baby again. And you'll be in trouble too. Because you left me with the baby and she got, killed. So we got to do something. Well, Tamara being under his complete control, she's listening to this bullshit about she's in as much trouble as he. They decide to call cab. They call A1 Cab Company, Camden City. Arrive Mr. White. A well-spoken black gentleman shows up with the cab after his call to that residence. It's pouring out rain outside. This is the night before the baby was found. I mean, Camden City is being hammered with a terrific rainstorm. She wraps the baby up in a blanket. The three of them get into the cab, Mom in the back seat with the baby, and Malik Abdul sitting right next to her. Now they drive around with no real destination in mind other than Malik tells the cab driver that he wants to go over to Philly to see an uncle. His uncle lives in a gated community somewhere in Pennsylvania. But on the way, they come to a bridge. I think it's somewhere around 10th Street, if I'm not mistaken. There's a body of water running under this bridge. Their plan is to let the baby slip out of the blanket over the bridge and into the river. They both get to the side of the bridge. They're looking down at the river. Tamara just can't let go of the child. She can't do it. They both get back into the cab. It's still pouring rain outside. The blanket's now soaking wet, and they drive on over to Philadelphia. When they get to the gated community of Malik's uncle, he refuses to buzz them in. We later found out why. He believed his nephew to be trouble, and he didn't want any part of him. So they return back to 36 and River Road, back to the house from which they came. Tamara places the baby upstairs in her crib. And the next morning is when Miss Lockstep came to the house and in her horror discovered the child. Well, now, with this new information, we had reason to believe that Malik Abdul was at least responsible for gross negligence in his caring for this child. We certainly had to bring him in again and do an in-depth interrogation with him concerning this new information. We did just that. It took us a few days, but we did find him again. The fact that he was making himself very scarce was also making us more irritated and more determined to find him. We knew that he was ducking and dodging the authorities, and we believed we knew why. Now, this case happened 36 years ago, and I'm doing it from memory. I don't have the police file in front of me. So, My belief was that it had been about a week since the first time we spoke to Mr. Abdul, but we did finally get him, and we brought him in, and by now we had received the most devastating news that we have ever heard. The results of the autopsy had revealed that this child, this 2-year-old, her blood and bile revealed that she had high levels of cocaine in her tiny system. We could not believe what we were hearing. A 2-year-old child with cocaine in her system. We were flabbergasted, but we were determined to find out how that is, why that is, and who was responsible for that. We had an idea, but now we had to get it. We had to get it on paper. We had to get it in a statement. That was not going to be easy to do. It was probably a good thing that it worked out that way, that we didn't have that results from the autopsy before we were able to get Mr. Abdul in for his second interview. But now that we had that, we had some serious ammunition to go after him with. We rounded him up, we brought him in, we got him into the Detective Bureau. He was advised of his rights under the Constitution. He waived his Miranda rights in writing, and we began our intense, blistering interrogation of him. I don't want to make it too short for you, but just know this. We hit him with the kitchen sink. We told him that the best thing he could do is cooperate with us, that we were going to charge him with being negligent in the care of this child, trying to illegally dispose of a deceased person, and that we had eyewitness statement of him, in fact, being that very involved in the death of this child. We put him in a corner. We told him he was already a convicted felon, and that if he expected that he was going to leave today without being arrested and charged, that he was highly mistaken, that we believe fully and wholeheartedly that he was definitely involved in the demise of this tiny broken angel. It took a little bit of time, but he finally confessed. He told us how the child got injured. He described it in great detail. On this most recent incident where she received the fractured skull and the broken leg prior to the death, and he was babysitting her. He was smoking crack cocaine in the house. The child wouldn't stop crying. She was getting on his nerves, very much so. So he threw her down the stairs. He admitted scolding her in the bathtub. And he admitted that he told Tamara to take the blame for him. On this last incident where the child died, he stated that again he was smoking crack cocaine in the home. Child wouldn't stop crying. Tamara had left the house to do some business in the street. We're not sure what exactly that business was, but we knew he was tapping into her welfare funds and using the monies for his crack cocaine habit. We knew that. We suspected that he was also using Tamara in an unsavory way, but we couldn't prove that at this time. But he admitted that this time, when the baby would not stop crying, he was angry. He threw her down the stairs, causing her severe injuries. He got her on the floor down in the living room, and he was inhaling cocaine, pinching off her nostrils, and blowing cocaine into the child's mouth. the smoke of the cocaine pipe into the child's mouth so that the child would stop crying. Are you kidding me? You induced smoke of your crack cocaine pipe into a 2-year-old baby's mouth while you're supposed to be caring for her? When we heard that, and we got it documented on tape, and the lab results backed up that statement, we knew that he would be specially treated when he went to court. Now, what he did not know was, and we had it in our back pocket, that after our last interview with Tammy Polk, we gathered the information that she could provide concerning the cab ride to hell. We learned that she made the phone call. The cab company checked their records. They found that on that specific night and time, a gentleman by the name of Mr. White was in fact the cab driver. We contacted him in very short order. We didn't tell him why, but we needed to speak to him. And we requested he meet us at the Camden City Detective Bureau, which he did. When he got there, he was very concerned because he knew, in fact, he was speaking to a couple of homicide detectives. He also was a little nervous. We assured him right from the front that he was in no trouble, but we needed his assistance in recalling a cab fare that he took from Camden City on River Road on that particular evening with the destination of Philadelphia to a gated community. He recalled it without any hesitation. He described that there was a mother, a small baby, and a man. They all three sat in the back seat. He described that he was requested of them to stop at a local bridge. He stopped for approximately 5 to 8 minutes, where they then got back into the vehicle without explaining why they wanted him to stop there. He then continued the cab fare over to the bridge and went to a gated community in Pennsylvania. The trio was denied access to the property by the gentleman's uncle. He returned them back to the home at 36th and River Road. He commented that that was the quietest baby that he has ever had the pleasure to transport in his cab. When he told him that the baby was quiet because she had been killed and that she was in fact deceased, he stood up and turned 3 shades of gray. We almost thought that he was going to pass out. He sat back down, put his head in his hands, and said, "Oh my God, a baby. Oh my God. Oh my God." And he was eventually asked to provide a tape recorder statement laying out the details of the time and date in question and that cab ride to hell, which he did without hesitation. Upon completion of his tape recorder statement, we advised him that we would send personnel from the Camden County Crime Lab to take photographs of his cab if needed, and we would make the arrangement at a later date. Now, we intended to use this information against Malik had he would have been so difficult where he would have put up a stone wall and tried to block us from him revealing the truth to us. We knew that Malik was now going to serve a ton of time in the prisons of New Jersey. We knew we had made it impossible, or at least extremely difficult, for his defense attorney to present a defense to this demonic crime that he admitted to committing. for this baby angel? Yeah, she was broken. She slipped through the cracks of a society that had systems in place to protect her. She was born to a mother, unfortunately, that could not protect her. She was introduced to the mother's devil of a boyfriend who could do nothing but torture her, abuse her, and eventually cause her demise. I do remember thinking during the course of this investigation that since she was in fact now dead, I had sort of hoped that maybe death would have came before she had to endure all of the torture that we uncovered in this case. I like to believe that her angels came and took her home. They took her to heaven, where she was given her wings. She is now, I'd like to believe, an angel. A broken angel, but an angel. In heaven, where she belongs. The end. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division, retired. Tune in again for more true crime stories from the murder capital of the nation. I'll see you soon.